It's the Worth Knowing live stream on my Substack, Worth Knowing with Matt Robison, and also on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn. Actually, we're on YouTube twice now because we're streaming in landscape and portrait mode because I think this video thing on phones is going to be big. Just a hunch. We have got a jam-packed show today. We're going to hit the unfolding Epstein files debacle for President Trump and how it fits into the larger picture of Trump's political decline, which is something that I wrote about on my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com yesterday. I want to dig into it a little bit more. And then I've got big news, a big announcement about a new show that I'm going to be running. I know you'll like it. It's going to be so much fun. And finally, we'll bring in our guest, my old friend and colleague from my congressional staffing days, former Bernie Sanders Chief of Staff, Michaeleen Crowell. And we're going to talk about the infighting that's beset the Democratic Party over the last week, how it's holding us back, and how we can fix it and go kick some MAGA ass. But first, of course, we have to talk about the news of the day, really the news of the last 48 hours, ever since Donald Trump executed his massive flip-flop on the Epstein files. So let's turn to that. And what I want to do, because this is unfolding right now as we speak, is I want to take a little bit of a step back, just a little bit, and remind ourselves how we got here. We are 4 months and 11 days since Donald Trump's Department of Justice told us no files would be released. And now the White House has agreed, actually, yes, all files will be released, although maybe not really. And that's an important point. We're going to circle back to it. What a debacle this has been for the president. 4 months of playing defense, dividing his supporters, dividing his base, wasting what little political capital he has. And believe me, it's not a lot. It's way less than he thinks. This is a classic trap that presidents fall into. I've written about it on Newsweek and reprinted that on my Substack. This is the classic trap. You remember George W. Bush in 2004. He wins the election. He says, I've amassed a lot of political capital and I'm going to spend it. No, wrong. You hadn't, George. You hadn't. And of course, he decided to spend it on trying to privatize Social Security, which boomeranged on him immediately. Donald Trump has decided to spend what marginal political capital he had dodging on the Epstein files. Oh, and also doing this crazy thing on tariffs and letting RFK Jr. run wild on health, as he promised, and trying to do this performative immigration deportation debacle. But the Epstein files is really what's divided his own political base. Now, when I studied under former presidential advisor David Gergen, I was his teaching assistant of all things. He had a cardinal rule for communications and politics. One rule: get it out yourself. Get it out first. Get it all out. I know that's a 3-part rule, but it's one rule. But instead, Donald Trump decided we're going to fight everything. And that's how we've gotten into a string of illogical reversals from Trump and MAGA world that completely redefine the idea of cognitive dissonance. Now, for a long time, people in the MAGA circle thought that the Epstein files were a useful political attack, mostly against Democrats, mostly against this perception that there's a deep state out there, right? And it's kind of a little bit like, this is a metaphor that some people have made recently. It's a little bit like the way Republicans have approached the Affordable Care Act, right? We always got to promise that there's something out there. And as long as we don't have to get into any details or, God forbid, do anything, it's great politically. But there's no there. And that's exactly what happened with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and all these other hooligans who've been making hay out of this for years. I mean, Pam Bondi was able to say, she came into office saying, I have the Epstein list on my desk. And then like a few days later was like, but it doesn't exist. See how that works, right? JD Vance back in 2021, this is a tweet from him. Remember when we learned that our wealthiest and most powerful people were connected to a guy who ran a literal child sex trafficking ring, and then that guy died mysteriously in a jail, and now we just don't talk about it? Guess who doesn't want to talk about it? So, in order to divert from the fact that, hey, they're now actually in charge. They now actually, we're waiting for your mysterious plan to replace the ACA. And what was it Nixon promised? I have a secret plan to get us out of Vietnam. We're waiting for the release, Pam. They're on your desk. They've done everything else they possibly could. They've been doing the 5 Ds of dodgeball.
Nice one, son. You'll be an all-star yet. Just remember the 5 Ds of dodgeball. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
Yes, the 5 Ds of dodgeball. First, you might remember back in February, they delivered these huge binders full of information, which is a step up from Mitt Romney and his huge binders full of women. Huge binders of information, and they handed them out to influencers. Turned out to already be information that was public, but they treated it as a big deal. See, look. So when no one was interested in that, they made a big announcement in July. You may not even remember this because it's like 15 political lifetimes ago. They said, there's nothing else to release. There's nothing else. We have nothing. There's nothing else to see here. Nope, that didn't work. So then Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche ran to federal prison, where he could have seen a lot of MAGA world before Trump pardoned them, to interview Ghislaine Maxwell. Freudian slip there. Epstein's accomplice in his crimes. And she also said, no, there's no further information here. Funny enough, right after that, she was inexplicably moved to a cushier federal prison where she gets, I'm not making this up, puppy visits. Also, Donald Trump has declined to rule out a pardon for Maxwell. And just as late as last week, as pressure was starting to mount behind this discharge petition, which is just a procedural maneuver in the House to force a vote on a bill. So there was a discharge petition. It's like any petition that you might, gather signatures for, except you can do this in Congress. And it's seen as a big slap in the face of your own parties. If you're in the majority and you execute a discharge petition, this is a giant middle finger to your leadership. So Thomas Massie got together a discharge petition along with Ro Khanna, and it's on the verge of passing. And one of the side effects, obviously, of the shutdown was that newly elected Adelita Grijalva from Arizona was not seated by Mike Johnson, which denied her the ability to become the majority-making vote on that discharge petition to force the release of the Epstein files. So with pressure mounting just last week, the Trump administration took their top law enforcement heavies, Blanche, Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and they grabbed Lauren Boebert. They kind of hustled her into a room, like one of those movie scenes where the Secret Service, huddles around someone. They hustled her into the Situation Room. Read Cliff's piece on this on Blue Amp, by the way. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. They hustled her into the Situation Room to sweat her on, won't you take your name off the discharge petition? Lauren Boebert, who barely has a synapse firing in her brain to connect. I know I shouldn't run down her intelligence. I should just run her down for being crazy. So, okay, my bad. She says no. She says, pound sand. I need my MAGA base more than I need you. And by the way, the denouement of all of this, his last act before caving, was for Trump to instruct his own Justice Department to investigate Epstein's ties to prominent Democrats. So that was the scene right before he caved. And he caved, by the way, right after Democrats released some emails, including one from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011, saying, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. A victim, redacted, spent hours at my house with Trump. He has never been mentioned. So that all led to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt issuing the greatest head scratcher, the greatest non-denial denial, which is a Watergate term, ever in the history of White House press secretaries. And that's saying something. Let's just take a look at it.
That have been released by House Democrats, separate from why you believe the emails were made public, can you address their substance? Did the president ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing.
Well, okay. All right. Okay. I know this is hard to keep track of here, but just for those of you playing along at home, what they're arguing is this is a hoax. This is when Donald Trump flipped on Sunday night and said, this is his quote, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. It's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics. Okay, so just if you're playing along, if you're trying to keep track of all of this is a hoax concocted by Democrats that implicates Democrats and exonerates Trump. Follow all that? And by the way, there's more in this like zany, let's all take the red pill. There's layers within layers here. It's all a wild thing. There's no Easter bunny.
There is no Easter bunny. There is no tooth fairy, and there is no Queen of England.
Because at the end of the day, Donald Trump doesn't need a vote. He could just tell Pam, hey, Pam, Bubala, release the Epstein files. He could do that. Nothing's stopping you, Don. Final point on this, and then we have to move on because we've got a lot more to cover today. The White House has already started signaling that they know that there's no floor to this. It's just going to keep going and going because now the pressure is mounting on Senate Majority Leader John Thune. Once the House votes to release the Epstein files, he'll be hard-pressed with Donald Trump saying, yeah, release the Epstein files, to try to bottle this up in the Senate. I'll ask Michaeleen about this when she joins us in a minute. She is, after all, a veteran Senate chief of staff. Actually, maybe I won't. I don't know. We've got to get onto the Democrats and Michaeleen. But suffice it to say, Thune is going to do this. But the White House is already signaling, we know that this is going to be a problem because the MAGA base is never going to be satisfied. They've been attuned to conspiracy theories now. The entire contour of the Epstein case is one of the oldest archetypes of conspiracy theory that exists. Do you see how it rhymes with the whole pizza, what was it, Comet Pizza, the whole QAnon conspiracy theory? Except in this case, it turns out to be real. But do you see how it rhymes with the blood libel against Jews, which is the oldest conspiracy theory in existence, right? There's a shadowy elite group that's molesting children. The base is never going to be satisfied. They're never going to be satisfied, no matter how many files they release, no matter what they say about, oh, now we've really gotten everything out, which takes me back to the Gergen rule. Get it out yourself, get it out first, and get it all out. That would have been the political smart thing to do, but they didn't because Trump is Trump. And that really does bring me to my final point on this. I think that this is part of Trump's steep political decline. When Lauren Boebert tells you and your henchmen to pound sand, when Indiana Republicans tell you and your henchmen to pound sand, no, we're not going to redistrict because we don't really want to do that. Our own base doesn't want us to do that. By the way, Nebraska Republicans said the same thing. My old friends in New Hampshire Republicans, my peeps, I mean, I'm a Democrat, but I got along with a lot of those guys. They all said, no, hell no, no. When the Supreme Court says, yeah, your tariff plan is unconstitutional, I mean, they're likely to say that at this point. When he is getting the Heisman from power base after power base that's recognizing that he is a net anchor on the Republican Party now, especially after the results of the election 2 weeks ago. As this increasingly snowballs, and by the way, as he increasingly walks into his own traps that he set. I mean, we just saw the news this week that Lindsay Halligan completely procedurally messed up her prosecution of the Comey case. She completely messed it up. She was taken to task in a 24-page opinion from the federal judge overseeing it. This goes back to something that I wrote in Newsweek. This is before I had a Substack, a year ago, right after Trump was elected. He's in a catch-22. He's stuck because he was determined to brush out all the competent professionals who worked in the federal government and replace them with incompetent amateurs who happen to be sycophants and toadies, like Lindsay Halligan. And that's what you get. That's what you get. You get rank incompetence, which stands in the way of your own objectives, your own agenda. And we're seeing it on issue after issue. Rank incompetence. We're seeing it on tariffs. We're seeing it on immigration. Where, by the way, for all the performative Fox News stuff, all the terror that they're inflicting in communities, do you know that Donald Trump is actually deporting fewer people than Biden? Look it up, day-to-day basis. He's completely failing at this. All right, that's enough of all of my ranting. Let me get to my big announcement before I bring on Michaeleen. I'm really, really excited about this. Really, really excited about this. I am launching a new weekly show. We're pretty sure that it's going to run on Fridays. I don't think initially we're going to live stream it because it's a little bit more highly produced. We may get to live streaming it eventually, but it's called the Politics Rehab Show. And I'm doing it with a Republican, an anti-Trump Republican, also named Matt, a previous guest on this live stream, Matt Wiley, who is a high-level political consultant for many Republican senators that you know. He is actively working to stop Donald Trump. And this is our attempt. We're calling it Politics Rehab because it's politics without the hangover. We are trying to make politics fun again. We're trying to re-engage the politically exhausted among us who can't take any more of this crap. And we're consciously modeling it after a sports show like PTI, not to treat any of this lightly, but to try and make it engaging, to try and make it, it's the same idea behind my Substack worth knowing. I want to make news and information fun, something you want to engage with again, and not just an exhausting slog, which, by the way, the more it's a slog, the more the authoritarians win, right? Because we don't want to deal with all the unpleasantness. So every week we're going to start, Matt and I, with our Trump dump, where we get out all of our vitriol and anger at Trump. Not that there's not always more to, it's a renewable resource, but we start there. That's our ante. That's, hey, everyone in the audience, wherever you are in the political spectrum, we're all aligned in this. We're against this authoritarian lunatic. Then we do our politics rundown. We do special segments like Matt GPT, role reversal, spraining a shoulder. We have a weekly segment that I'm really, really into, looking forward to, called That's Bullshit. You can guess what that's all about. And then we close with each of us doing 1 minute of what we call a dose of hope. So I hope you will tune into it. Where can you find this show? Well, my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com. We'll also have it up on YouTube, on the Beyond Politics podcast, and more. Okay, I'm done shilling for myself. Thank you all for bearing with me through that. And I am, at this time, so excited to welcome back one of the true guiding lights in politics, the pride of Lowell, Massachusetts, Michaeleen Crowell. Oh, my goodness.
Yay, good to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you. It is really.
Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, it's delightful. And look, this is sort of case in point of what we wanted to talk about. I'm kind of a center kind of guy. You've worked for Bernie. Other people, you also, I mean, you worked for that noted centrist Ted Kennedy. So you have been a luminary,
A liberal lion, as it were.
liberal lion. Yes. But boy, do we agree on like a lot. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today. And just as a jumping off point, I want to show a graphic here from G. Elliot Morris. Hey, Elliot, if you ever agree to come on this show, which I've teased you with, and you're like, I don't really do live streams, but we'll see. If you ever come on, I want to know, do you prefer to be called G or Elliot? Just throwing that out there. G. Elliot Morris, former 538 data analyst with The Economist as well, now on Substack, put out this fascinating graphic. Let me remove the banner here so that we can actually see ourselves. His point is both parties are tremendously unpopular. But Republicans, their problem is independent voters. Their problem is anyone who isn't a dyed-in-the-wool Republican or even a dyed-in-the-wool MAGA Republican. For Democrats, our problem is a little different. Our problem is that our own party is unhappy with its leadership and with its direction. And that's why when you see the top line of polls saying, I don't like this political party, or they're out of touch, that's why you see the numbers so high for Democrats. And in a way, it's sort of the biggest strategic problem we face as a party, because we should be crushing these guys right now, and we're not, because of some of our own fractions. That's my jumping off point. That's how I see it. Do you agree?
I do. I think there's a conversation that's been playing out in the Democratic Party for about 20 years, but I think it's really come to a head in the last 8 or so. And I think a lot of folks have just not learned some of the lessons from 2016. And I think we have, as a party, not communicated really well with our traditional base. We've not shown that the government that we champion and get tagged with status quo for is actually working, and haven't reevaluated where it deserved reevaluating. And I think in general, we've a lot of older folks who just aren't connecting in the same way with the younger base. And I also see sort of infringement from the Democratic Socialist part of the world as well. And I think, Bernie had that title for a long time, and it would not have made sense from an authenticity perspective for him to change that. There are those who are running on that banner who could be making different decisions if they felt like the party were able to hear them and to welcome them into their tent. And I also think that the things that are coming out of the mouths of the Democratic Socialists are not things that are foreign to the Democratic Party. They are things that the party has once and can again stand for. We're just not articulating those aspects of it particularly well to especially younger voters.
I want to, well, let me get to one comment here. Some people boil this down. Let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. The Cynthia Rice. Some people boil this down to it's a generational problem. Now, Bernie is what? 83?
Yep.
You and I, we go back long enough to where we both had brown hair.
Yes,
Exclusively.
I
Now,
still have a little.
you've
back
still
here,
got,
but-
well, you've still got some. Me, not so much. I look like Pepe Le Pew across the top. Is this an age problem, or is it an ideology problem, or something else?
I think it's it's getting too far away from your supply lines. I think it's getting too far away from voters. I think it's forgetting why you were sent there in the first place, and forgetting, what is actually happening in the communities that people represent. I think some of the most brilliant campaigners over this last cycle, this recent cycle here, have been the ones who've really gotten out into the world and talked with actual voters and could hear their feedback and have pivoted their messaging from what traditionally Democrats have said to something that is actually listening to the issues that have been bubbling for the last decade or so. And I think when you, it's taken us so long to turn to affordability, and it's taken us so long to turn toward the working class, that they've started to think that we're just doing it to win elections, which doesn't really make the base really happy with how the Democratic Party is listening and accepting feedback and then pivoting in terms of solving problems for actual people.
I want to plop up here on the chats. And by the way, my apologies to all of our friends who are active chatters. For it is very hard when I do one of these opens, one of these extended opens where I'm monologuing. I'm like a supervillain in a Marvel movie, and I'm like getting caught monologuing. So I'm monologuing there, and I'm looking at my notes, and I'm putting up banners, and I'm hitting videos. I can't also have a fourth part of my brain doing chats. Too much gray hair. I'm too old for that. I think a digital native who's like 19 could do all four things at the same time. Me, not so much. Anyway, I'm trying to catch up on all of the wonderful comments that have been streaming in. One of them from a bit of a dissenter here, which I'm very happy to plop up here, which is Ed Blazing Game 8139. I apologize if I'm misconstruing your handle. The Demo Rats. Oh no. I hope that's a typo, man. Come on, Ed. The Demo Rats are now communist. You have one on each coast now. Wait, who's the one? First of all, we have more than one on each coast, man.
I think Mondami was trying to get people to understand that it's not pronounced communist, it's pronounced cyclist.
There it is.
I don't know if you saw that video. It was super cute. But yeah, there's actually another Democratic Socialist that was elected in Seattle, I think.
That's what it is. Okay. And that must be what Ed's talking about.
That might be what he's talking about. So, I think we get caught up in titles that don't mean anything, that are meant to scare people. But I don't actually think the younger generation is scared by anything anymore. Words are just words. And it's actually, what are people talking about and who are they talking to and how authentic are they? This young woman apparently lives in an 800 square foot apartment. She takes the public transportation to work, rides the buses, is actually a member of the community and is elected now to represent it. So I'll take whatever names people want to throw at these candidates, but the fact is they live in these communities. They listen to people in the communities. They are attempting to solve problems that impact their communities. Call that whatever you want to. I call it good politics and good representation. And after all, that's what government is about, representing the people that you're sent there to represent.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with you. And just to try to unwind some of the discussion from the last few minutes, I'm not sure that it's the communist issue. I was about to say, I don't think it's the C word. That's a different thing. Nope. Do you remember that joke on Arrested Development where they get a boat called the SEAWARD, the C word? Oh gosh. Anyway, that show, so brilliant. I don't think it's the communist label. I'm not so sure it's the socialist label. Now look, about 10 years ago, I had really good polling in hand showing that slapping the word socialist on anything, if you're a Republican running for Congress, for example, slapping the word socialist on any proposal or any candidate from the Democratic Party gave you 10 points advantage. I don't know that that's so true anymore. I haven't seen more recent polling. I literally don't have evidence on this.
But I don't think it is. I think young people don't care.
I don't think they care. I agree with Lefty Gramps. I mean, look, and Lefty Gramps is owning the Gramps part of this, it's either ridiculous or it's just not relevant. I don't think that's the issue. And I also think that from the left, I don't think Mamdani won. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I don't think he won because of the socialist label. I don't think people care about the ideological label. They care about the fact that he was focused on what they have on their minds, on not being able to afford the rent, not being able to afford the buses, not being able to afford the groceries. That's all he talked about. And he did it in slick vertical videos, which, by the way, if you're on YouTube right now, you can watch this in portrait mode. You can watch this on your phone because all the kids apparently have these things these days. Oh my gosh, this picture of my son that just came up, I can't plop it on the screen, but my gosh, my 9-year-old just redid my iPhone so that it shuffles through pictures of my kids because he knows how to do that. I don't. I'm a dope. But yeah, so you can be watching this on vertical portrait mode now. I don't think it's the age. I don't think it's the label. I do think, though, going back to something you said a few minutes ago, I do think that there's a little bit of an issue here. It's taken, as you said, Democrats a long time to pivot to affordability, and we've lost working class voters. But it's often said that in politics, culture trumps economics. And I wonder if we have a culture problem. I wonder if we have a deplorables problem. I wonder if, I'm not going to invoke the W word, but I wonder if the things that Republicans have been saying have some truth to them, that there is a sense among voters that they are seen as deplorable, that they are culturally looked down upon, and that is an impediment to Democrats. It's an impediment to elites. What do you make of it?
You've hit the right word. Elites is the word that I was going to use. I think elites in both party are having a bad time of it over the past decade. People don't want to see, they want to see themselves reflected in their leaders. And I think you can have a smart person. I mean, Mamdani is a smart person. He speaks in full sentences, and he makes coherent arguments and has conversation. So it's not necessarily anti-elite. It's just authenticity, and it's speaking to, human beings and addressing problems that actually are meaningful to them. Now, do you have to understand how the world works and how it's going to impact the economy and how the bigger picture is going to unfold? Yeah, I think that's extremely important. But I actually think that he's able to do both, walk and chew bubblegum. And I think the Democratic Party has for a long time not been able to walk and chew bubblegum. We have not been able to speak with actual humans and voters. We have been too much in with the elites and addressing problems that maybe aren't on the front of people's minds when they're trying to afford childcare and food and the bus and rent. So I think that there's a big disconnect that the party just needs to really get at. I do also, though, not to say it's an age thing, but it is a little bit of a technology thing, that there are ways to communicate with people. And I think you still need to be face to face with folks. You need to be riding down the bike lane on a city bike. You need to be out in communities. You need to be eating in restaurants where locals eat. You need to have conversations with real human beings. But there is a way to use the technology that we have to have conversations with people that aren't out and about in the streets. And he did it in an extremely brilliant way that not only showed his versatility in terms of proving his case, this is in Mamdani's case, but also, showing that he was able to solve problems in his previous positions. So we've just not shown that we can solve problems for people in a long time from Washington.
Right. And I find myself in a position often of defending Mamdani. And I don't think he needs defending from me, but at the very least, I find myself justifying his approach to his campaign in the following way. I don't think that voters took Trump literally when he said, we're going to build a wall, we're going to deport 11 million illegal. I mean, some of them did. I mean, look, there are some deplorables within his basket of deplorables. Let me tell you, there are people who do take him literally. But no, I no more think that voters should take that kind of rhetoric literally than I think voters should take Mamdani literally when he says all public transit is going to be free and we're going to have a $30 an hour minimum wage. They're aspirational, they're directional, they're unrealistic. And he's a smart enough man to know that. That's not practical. Now, I mean, maybe in his mind it is, but oh, wow, I've got to ban someone. We have got a straight on anti-Semite in the chats. So we are going to put we're going to ban this user and delete their comments. Wow. It doesn't take long for that to come out. Bye. See ya. So I find myself kind of, I don't know why we are holding Mamdani to this kind of a standard. That said, I think the onus is on him. And we are going to veer back to the main thrust of our conversation. He has to there's a lot riding on this because he's going to be the poster child for the Democratic Party. He is going
to be Ted Kennedy. Then it was Bernie Sanders.
You've been there.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So he is going to have to, walk and chew gum. And I'm going to, all right, I'm going to go ahead and put this comment up.
Before we leave Mamdani, though, just for 1 second.
Oh, go ahead. No, this is on Mamdani. Go ahead.
Okay, so so I just want to talk about the Democratic Party a little bit. The establishment candidate that they brought in at the last moment as a dying gasp to save that seat from a socialist, I think has been a really interesting thing to watch because it's happening around the country where processes are playing out. Candidates are getting traction. And when it looks like someone who's not controllable by the party seems to be gaining steam, they come in and put an establishment candidate in. It's happening up in Maine. It happens in other places. It certainly happened during the 2016 campaign. It happened again in 2020 with Bernie. The party just couldn't handle the fact that he was going to be unpredictable and put their thumb back on the scale for somebody who was more establishment and more able to be controlled and more predictable, as it were. So I think we, in general, have a party problem, which is you got to let some of these processes play out. You've got to democratize the Democratic Party. You've got to allow the will of the people to play out occasionally. And if you don't, you end up with things like Trump. The Republican Party is not super thrilled about that either. That party has taken a complete turn, and your sort of establishment Republicans have been having a problem with that for the last 10 years.
Oh, your whole live stream is going to the dogs. And thank you, the Cynthia Rice, for being my troll slayer. Oh, wow. What an epic moniker. I want to be a troll slayer too. I just got to go after one. Yeah, take that, trolls. I think where I was going with the Mamdani thing, and look, I mean, again, Jim Williams, you're right. Like, yeah, some bus lines could be free, and we could have a trial, of a city-run grocery store. We could try some ideas. More to the point that I think you and I wanted to get to. I think that the big pivot to affordability has been a huge positive. I think that it has united both factions of the Democratic Party. It's not just kind of a practical, like, hey, we've hit on a message that resonates, that works, and that centrists and progressives can both own. We can have shared custody of this message. Like, great, wonderful. I think it is necessary but not sufficient. And that's what I wanted to get to with you. And this is something I've been working on, and I'm planning to do a lot more on it in the months ahead. Here's my case. Affordability is so important. People are living through a lot of pain around necessities in life. Childcare, healthcare, groceries, housing. There was really good evidence from the Center for American Progress in the mid-2010s that in the preceding decade, for middle-class families, the cost of those big four had gone up $10,000. That's a lot of money. And that was before the rapid inflation we've seen in recent years. But what I worry about is that the solutions that we're putting forward tend to amount to, and I say this without judgment, big, bold government programs like your boss used to talk about that have, the ring of, well, it's a big government program. It's a handout. Now, I know there was a comment here a few minutes ago. Hey, what's wrong with we get our own money as socialism? No, you're right, Ryan. Like, I know it's our own money. But I think it's fundamental. And this is a proposition. I'm going to throw this out to Michaeleen. You tell me what you think. I think it's fundamentally in the DNA of Americans that we want to be able to afford the things we want with money that we've earned. We want to take some pride in our work. And look, some Democratic Party ideas like the minimum wage are great. I like raising the floor, but I don't think it gets to the core problem that we used to have a robust middle class that felt like they were thriving and getting ahead, and we don't. And raising the minimum wage doesn't address that problem. I just said a lot, but that's my pitch to you, is that there's a gaping hole. It's great that we have a little shaky détente between progressives and centrists on the issue of affordability, and that might hold through 2026. But I'm worried that we still have a gaping hole in the center of our party around prosperity, growth, thriving, feeling like you're getting ahead in life. Thoughts?
Yes, and I put going to the dogs, to your point, my dogs were heading out for a little walk. So
It's so nice when
I
they
have to
finally
put
grow up and
myself
take
on
care of
mute.
themselves.
I know. So yeah, I think that there is a floor that is really important for so many people. And I think that's something that the Democrats have for the most part, protected for a long time. And we're seeing it being decimated by this administration. So I think it's easy to go back to protecting that floor, protecting that safety net. And I think that's something that we have to do as Democrats. But I think you're hitting on something really important, which is this robust middle class. Anyone who's working for a wage or even a salary, anybody sort of in the middle who is not reliant on trust fund and investment income. And I'm not talking about people that have a 401k, people who live off their investments. These are people who are operating on a different plane than those of us who work for a living and make a salary, or are making a wage, even if it is a high wage. I think we've fundamentally missed something about those folks feeling that they are continuing to pay into a system that doesn't give anything back to them. And so where is the money going? We are not a country that is lacking for resources. We do have to look at where those resources are going. And when you talk about the focus of the government, for the most part, when you look at the Big Beautiful Bill or any other piece of policy that's going through the system, a lot of those pieces will never have any impact on actual human beings. And so the fact that they're seeing their government do things that aren't having impact on them is fundamentally the problem. And if we need to, God forbid I use the R word, redistribute some of that money from other places.
We have to stop calling words by a first letter because we're getting it wrong consistently, both of us.
The R word.
The R word, no.
Redistribute.
That's not any better than the C word, Michaeleen. All right, we're doing terribly.
But really, we are. And so we have to figure out a way, though, to ensure that all of the resources in this nation really aren't focused on, and I don't want to sound like Bernie, but aren't focused on corporations and people who are extraordinarily wealthy and don't need the assistance. And so how do we both give relief to people who are working every day, like I said, whether it's for a wage or for a salary, and are not, reliant on other types of income? We've got to figure this out. And in the last Trump administration, there was not a corporation that was asking for the corporate tax rate to be as low as it ultimately was. None of them were asking for that. It was just a giveaway. So we have to decide what our priorities are as a nation. Yes, we need to protect the floor and the safety net, but there's something else going on in the middle, which is why we're losing Democrats and why we're having this problem just generally speaking with people who we disagree with, who should absolutely be with us on the safety net issues.
Right. And I think, to your point, and the reason I've left, Cynthia, you always get as much airtime as you want in your chats on this show because you're an awesome chatter. However, I think that she's raising an important point.
Yeah.
These are deep problems in our economy. This is a 50-year problem that's been building that came out of changes to the international monetary system in 1971 that led to different kinds of trade flows and a lot more manufacturing happening in other countries and a growing trade deficit for the US and an increasing disadvantage for American manufacturing. And then that was accelerated by NAFTA and China's accession to the WTO in the year 2000. And the upshot of all of that has been an absolute crushing force like Our middle class is in the trash compactor in Star Wars: A New Hope, an absolute crushing force on the middle class. Now, what we've seen is in districts, congressional districts, that have been most impacted by these forces, most impacted by trade. If they were previously left-leaning, Democratic Party leaning, or majority minority, they became Bernie Sanders districts in 2016. You're probably very, very familiar with that.
Indeed.
If they were previously somewhat right-leaning, just a little bit, they all became Trump districts, because these are people who are being subjected to the same economic forces and are having essentially the same political reaction, different versions of it in different parties. Now, Trump's is MAGA, xenophobic, racist insanity, and Bernie's is fundamentally compassionate and decent. I'm not sure I agree with all of his policy prescriptions, but it's still left us with the problem that is up on the screen here, which is and I've lost Michaeleen, so I'm going to go straight to filibuster mode. It's led us to the problem that we have up on the screen here. And this is from the Searchlight Institute. It's a new think tank. And what they're showing here, based on their polling, is the view that voters have of Democrats. The view that voters have of Democrats, look at what I did. I filibustered. That's really your expertise, not mine. I was always a House guy. You became Senate gal. You used to be a lowly House gal, and then you ascended to the upper chamber. So I successfully filibustered through the gap there.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. But the problem that Democrats have is the way voters view us is we are the party of putting a net under you. We're there for you for stability. We're there for you for healthcare. We consistently enjoy an advantage on healthcare. We're there for you for Social Security. We're there for the minimum wage. We're there for a floor under you. We are not creating a trampoline. And all of these things that you aspire to aren't associated with what the Democratic Party wants. So purely from a political standpoint, I think that's my argument is, to Cynthia's point, it's a long-term problem, but that's the hole we need to fill.
Well, with the quick fix issue, and I think, Democrats are interested in being wonky and working in 12-point plans and debating something until it's a pulp of what it was in the beginning. I think people want to see big ideas. And so free buses and, frozen rent, I got to be honest, that doesn't seem like a big reach. That seems like something you could prioritize with one or two small changes in your budget. Those are just not, if somebody's calling those big, bold ideas, God bless us, because we have completely we've missed the point here. But to be aspirational is a good thing too. I do think that people want to hear something aspirational. What they heard from Trump, whether you like it or not, was something big and bold and different, and they were going to shake up the status quo. We don't hear that a lot from Democrats. And I think we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to come to grips with the fact that we have not defended some of the programs that are working and continue to work. And we didn't have a person at the top of the government in the last administration who was able to make that case, despite the fact that there were some very good progressive things that happened during the Biden administration. So I think we need to figure out how to get people invested in complex issues while actually speaking to issues that really sing to them, like childcare. I think, for just as one example, that is one of those places where it's been a great talking point for everybody, and no one has any intention whatsoever of actually trying to solve that problem. It could be bipartisan. It could be fixed tomorrow morning. Nobody really wants to actually get into the weeds on that because they'd rather just talk about it as a campaign issue. I think you're seeing the same thing playing out here in Washington right now with the Affordable Care Act subsidies. That, that's the next vote that's going to happen. The Democrats get to choose what kind of a vote they want to have. There's absolutely no way to solve this problem in a bipartisan way It's going to continue to be a campaign issue. It is going to continue to be an affordability discussion. I do think we need to put forward some big ideas for people to get excited about and to latch onto. And I think Democrats have to stop speaking in 12-point plans. That said, the Republicans have taught us something really interesting this time around, which is they had a playbook. They implemented it fast and furious.
You mean
We don't have
Project
any such
2025?
thing. Indeed, that is what I speak of. But we don't have something like that that's ready to be implemented should we, be the dog that catches the car in this next presidential election. So I think we've got a lot of work to do as a party to really make sure that we've got not only some quick fixes that we could do with an executive order, but also to address some of the complicated issues in ways that are actually addressing people's real life concerns.
And I think one of the issues, to build on that point, that we face is all of this is complicated. All of this is extremely complicated. I have a degree in economics, and I will admit that I find it complicated. And it's very, very hard to try to not just explain, because that makes me sound like an elitist prick, and I am one, but not for that reason. It's very, very hard to have a good, strong, straightforward conversation with voters about economic issues that doesn't make you sound terrible, which is why Mamdani is amazing. And by the way, just as a sidebar, I have never wanted to eat halal from food trucks so much in my life.
Yeah.
What the hell? I'm a Jewish dude from New York, and I want me some halal. Let me tell you something. Growing up in New York City in the 1970s and 1980s, we did not have delicious food trucks. We had food trucks. They mostly sold crack, and we had soubrette hot dog stands. My New York people out there, I know we're from all around the world here on this live stream. You know what I'm talking about. You are talking about little carts selling mystery meat, probably processed pigeon. None of this is what is in Mamdani's ads. That halal looks delicious. It should be $8. I agree with him on this issue.
Yes.
I will go to the mat for this. But I want to go back to a comment here. And again, I'm not afraid. As long as people aren't being racist trolls, one of whom I've slain already in this live stream, please put up dissents, put up differing points of view. I'm good with it. Here's El Cheapo Productions. Love the ape here. I don't know what that means, but that's awesome. El Cheapo Productions writes, Biden's infrastructure bill created an 8% inflation rate. Thanks, Kamala Harris. All right. I'm going to dissent from your dissent. I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. Not trying to be rude about this. I just disagree with you. Here's why. Here, I'm showing up on the screen here. Here's what happened to inflation around the world. I know I'm being a Democrat. I'm explaining with graphs and charts. Look, Michaeleen, don't you laugh at me.
Make it less complicated. Go. I'm listening.
The U.S. did better on inflation than every other advanced economy in the world. That's the headline. We did better. Our inflation came down fastest and furthest of all our competitors. Now, why is that? Well, who is the president? Thanks, Joe Biden. The infrastructure bill did not cause inflation. Biden's American whatever rescue plan did not cause inflation. It probably was a slight layer on top. That was not the cause of inflation. COVID and snarls in our supply chain was the cause of inflation. Too much demand chasing too little supply. Supply and demand. It happened all around the world, and the United States under Joe Biden did the best. Now, was he tone deaf about it? Did he message completely boneheadedly about it? Yes, of course he did. But that doesn't mean that the charge is correct. So that's my point, is that these things are hard to talk about. They're hard to have political conversations about that are rational. But I still think that the basic proposition holds, which is we need to find a way to talk about how we're going to help people to own a home, own a car, a big ass truck, as Senator Gallego said, make your children rich. I mean, baby boomers own half the wealth in this country. We're not boomers, we're Gen Xers. But our generation is doing pretty well. The youngest, the Gen Zers, the Gen Alphas, they own less than 10% of the wealth in this country.
And I'm
So,
not convinced that they're going to have the same opportunities having,
I mean, your kids will because they're brilliant.
well, they wonder about it.
And by the way, all right, okay. By the way, El Cheapo's coming back at me. Okay, I first of all, I want to agree with Kinky Streets. Hebrew National are the only hot dogs I eat since Nathan's hot dogs are made by China Smithfield Foods now. Yeah, also because they answer to a higher authority and you don't get as many anuses and snouts. Second of all, El Cheapo comes back and says, I teach economics at SMU. All right. I was about to say my man, my lady, whoever, El Cheapo, I'm willing to have this conversation with you. I'm just saying, the numbers don't lie here. And I will grant you that the injection of funds into the economy via the American Rescue Plan probably did add a little layer, 0.5%, 1%. I don't know. Mark Zandi was on the show, the People's Economist. That was his estimate and his model, but that wasn't the reason for inflation. If Biden's policies were the reason for inflation, I'm wondering why it happened in Germany. That's my argument. Anyway, Michaeleen, we are about to reach the top of the hour, and I've filibustered my way through it. How do we stop the brewing Democratic civil war that's causing so many of your progressive friends? You're responsible for all these people forevermore. Who to feel like they don't like our party. How do we seal the rift?
I don't think we stop the brewing. I think we have to let it play out. And I know that makes everyone in the party uncomfortable. But I think the fact of the matter is we have an opportunity right now to stem some of these losses, flip the House, get our act cleaned up. But I do not think that short-circuiting a process is the way to go here. I think we have got to let the democratic process play out in the Democratic Party, and that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. I think it's really the only way to ensure that people feel like they are able to come back into this party, be represented by it, be heard by it. And I think we've got a long way to go.
All right. Well, listen, first of all, El Cheapo, hit me up, worthknowing.substack.com. I'm happy to have an economics debate. If you're an actual professor, I stopped at my master's degree, so you probably have the drop on me if you've got your PhD, but I lose arguments all the time. I lose them to Michaeleen. I used to lose them in the house. I lose them at home. It's great. I'm not afraid of that. I would just build on your point to say that I agree we need to have it out, but it's like fighting with your spouse. It's all got to be within the construct of, hey, we're married here. And sometimes we all get carried away in the midst of these fights. There's an old saying that you can measure the health of your marriage by how many of bite marks from your own teeth you have on your tongue. And it's like, I have my disagreements with certainly the DSA and certainly progressives, but I think we're on to something here with affordability. And I think that most progressives would agree with my point about wealth creation, about the earlier point from, who is it? Cool Beans, something Beans. That ultimately let's put our money, our tax dollars to work helping Americans accumulate wealth, accumulate livelihoods, and feel like they can own some big ass trucks if that's what they want to own.
And it ultimately would inure to the benefit of sort of the corporate wing of the party in terms of ensuring that there are people who can actually buy their big ass trucks when they're actually putting them on the market to be sold. So I think that there should be a way to come back together to bridge some of these divides, and no one should be completely happy with the outcome. And I think that's how we're going to know that the party has reached the ability to have a conversation within itself and actually arrive at a least common denominator that actually moves the ball forward for people in their lives.
Right. And the final thing I'll say is, if we saw one thing in the election results of 2025, It's that we cannot do this without the other faction of the party. We cannot defeat MAGA authoritarianism on our own, whatever faction you feel like you identify with. Or maybe you don't feel like you identify with a particular faction at all. Maybe you don't feel like anyone is quite capturing your view of the world. And that's fine. That's the way most Americans feel. If you're against what Trump is doing, we can't beat it without the big tent of allies. And so I would just once again would urge our fellow Democrats, we have to get there without shivving our friends and allies in the party. So am I on board with everything the progressives have brewing? No. But, like, I know their hearts are in the right place, and I hope that they think that mine is too. And, I think we have a lot of common ground, and maybe I can tamp down some of my obnoxious centrist cynicism, and maybe they can tamp down some of their excesses of wokery, and we can all get along. If you're feeling kind of politically exhausted and you don't like the trolls and you like conversations, you like people who live on air invite random SMU professors to continue the conversation, I hope you will go to worthknowing.substack.com and sign up so that you can, here, I'm going to splash it up, so that you can get the new show, Politics Rehab. It is going to be fun, fast-paced, upbeat. And I can go from having Michaeleen, my lefty friend, to having Matt Wiley, my Republican righty friend, and we can have a relatively positive, upbeat time taking on politics. So, final thoughts. Anything you're pushing? Anything you're pitching?
I'm pitching for people to realize that we have a lot more in common than we have separating us. And so I think that's going to be the major theme, I hope, of the Democrats going forward. And also, I think inviting some of your more moderate, say, Republican friends onto our team to defeat authoritarianism, I think is where we need to wind up.
I pray that you're right. And look, on that delightful note, let's look with positivity forward to the launch of the new show. I will have you back. Every time I have you on, I'm like, God damn, it was too long. We should have done this sooner.
We have a lot to talk about.
Oh, we have so much to talk about. There's so much. All right. So we're going to not let it stray quite so long. In the meantime, and if I don't see you till next Tuesday out there in the chats, stay safe, be well, have a great week.